In this video, you're going to learn 3 tips for equipping and empowering the next generation of worship leaders. My name is Jake Goslin with churchfront.com, an online resource for innovative and creative church leaders. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can receive all of our latest content to help you grow yourself and grow your church. Make sure you also check out the show notes below this video in the description for links to the podcast of this interview in case if you don't want to watch this long video. And I also have some quick navigation links below this video as well so you can kind of jump ahead to the helpful tips. If you're like me and you are in your late 20s or perhaps maybe early 30s, mid 30s, and that's actually the majority of the demographics who watch this channel, then we have to start thinking about how we are going to equip the next generation of worship leaders. Right now at Mission Lakewood, I have my friend Ashton. Hey Ashton, say hi.
Hi.
There's Ashton. He is, I guess, our unofficial / official, don't really know what to call it, worship intern. He's been helping us out a lot. He wants to go into worship ministry. He's just about to graduate high school, so he's getting a lot of experience at Mission Lakewood, helping us out in the band, and it's been fun to see him and his passion and interest for worship ministry. And I got to figure out, as a worship leader, how can I continue to equip and empower him to live into the gifting and calling that God has placed on his life. So that's why I'm excited to share my interview with Cody Bray from the Worship Point with you. He's going to share 3 tips for equipping and empowering the next generation of worship leaders. The best leaders make more leaders, and that's something I have felt personally convicted about, that I need to be more intentional about and make time for. And having this interview with Cody only made me feel more convicted about this, so hopefully it does the same for you. But not only will it convict you, but it will also give you some tangible ideas of how to take action on equipping the next generation. So here's my interview with Cody. Cody Bray, welcome to the Churchfront Podcast.
No, man, appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Hey, I'm excited to introduce you to the Churchfront community and what you are up to. So let's just go ahead and begin with that. Where are you at? What you doing? Okay. What does your ministry look like?
Yeah, man. So, like I said, name's Cody in Conway, Arkansas, and I'm a part of a organization that we're getting ready to launch called Worship Point. And so over the last, I'd say right at 10 years, we've since 2008 been playing in a worship band called Summerhill, and so have the opportunity to do mostly youth and college age events for the last feels like forever, and so over that time, meeting with students, meeting with college age students, you get a lot of questions. We're traveling, kind of doing these one events, so you'll see these kids for over the course of a D now or the course of a camp. So you've got 2 or 5 days with these kids, and so you get a lot of questions, things like that. And over that time, we're getting a lot of questions about hey, how do I grow? How do I get people to invest in me as a worship leader, as a creative? And so all of that kind of led to this place where we wanted to really intensify our efforts and kind of focus on our efforts to equip and empower the next generation of worship leaders. And so that's what we're doing, man. So we're getting ready to actually move out to California and kind of launch all this stuff, and that's a story in itself, but I'll save that for a different time. But man, our ministry really revolves around just discipleship and developing. We do a couple things that I'll talk about later, but man, just exciting time of life. We're getting ready to make a big move, kind of a big leap of faith, just to kind of step out into what we really feel like God's calling us to. So it's cool times.
I love how you guys were serving faithfully, doing one sort of task as far as just leading worship, at those whether they're camps or things like that for younger kids, and then sort of the question kept rising, hey, of course, a lot of teenagers are looking up to you guys as worship leaders and be hey, what if that's what I want to do with my life? I know that those were the shoes, I was in those shoes 10 plus years ago. Gosh, seems like forever ago now, when I was in high school. And it isn't quite clear cut, for which direction, these younger worship leaders or the folks who are aspiring worship leaders, we need to direct them, because, for other maybe vocations and careers, it's easy to say like, hey, yeah, okay, you want to be a firefighter, go to fire academy. If you want to be an engineer, go to this great engineer school and then go get a job, whatever. But for worship leading, it's just different. I think it's not. Yeah. There's and I also think there's not necessarily one set track that everybody takes. Like, it looks different for everybody how you kind of stumble into worship ministry. But I love your intentionality of thinking about the next generation, and it's kind of weird. I'm like, I'm even at the age now, I'm in my late 20s, where it's like, I got to start thinking about the next generation more, right? Because I'm not going to be the main primary worship leader at my church forever, and I even already have a young guy named Ashton who is just about to graduate high school, and he's like, hey, I want to be a worship leader. And I'm like, cool. Hang out with me, and we'll figure. And you can lead with me every week, and I'll kind of show you the ropes and stuff. So, I'm just excited though to hear from you and have you share with the church front community about like specifically what this looks like, and kind of give us some practical direction on really equipping the next generation. So how do we approach this really exciting but also kind of daunting task? Yeah,
for sure. So I'm having some technical difficulties, so if I drop you at any point, just let me know. But okay. But man, the big thing, and so kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, when we were putting all this stuff together, we were kind of looking around at what people were doing to kind of invest in worship leaders. And so you've got things like, Bethel and like the whole like Worship U thing. You've got the Worship Initiative, like Shane and Shane's thing, which is, all of those are incredible resources. But we felt, just with our experiences and how God has kind of gifted us, that a more hands-on approach would be a better fit for us. And so we kind of launched into this idea of like hosting like on-site training clinics and then like follow-up coaching. So basically coming into your space, kind of like looking at kind of like what you've got going on, and then trying to help you set goals and like kind of like a plan of action to kind of get to where you feel like you would want to get. And then our coaching basically steps in after that to help just kind of keep people accountable and help them moving forward by like providing resources and stuff. And so as I look at those things, and the question kept kind of coming up, like, how do we measure our effectiveness as an organization, as a ministry? And I think it was like you and I that were talking about this the other day, was if the people who already have influence and relationships in those students' lives are not being equipped like further, then I don't think that we're really doing our job well. And so that kind of steps into this idea of like what we're talking about today, of equipping those that equip, because we can come in for 2 days and do a clinic with a bunch of students, but more than likely they're going to forget everything that I said or that our team said. But if we're investing our core values and these resources and this biblical kind of perspective of worship into those leaders and those that are already equipping, then I think this is something that can become, I think we'll just be doing what God's called us to do. And so for that, our core values are these like 3 simple words that we pull from Colossians 3:16 that just says like, let the richness, the message of Jesus fill your lives, teach and admonish each other with the wisdom that he gives, and then sing songs of grateful hearts. And so from that, we pull our core values, this idea of know, share, and create. And so this all plays into this, but this idea of like, you can't lead people to something that you don't know already. And then a natural next step of coming to know Jesus and experiencing Jesus is to share that. And then beyond that, we create because of what we know and because of what we shared and have experienced. So we create now to help other people now know that and experience that. And so for like our leaders and those that are already doing this equipping, I just had 3 thoughts, man, just like kind of like looking into this, like how as those who are equipping, and maybe those that are listening to this that say like, man, I'm not really doing this, and maybe you walk away from this conversation, or maybe God's already been stirring something in you to like kind of start doing this, would be this idea of like first identifying yourself as someone who can equip, and identifying those around you that are looking to be equipped, and then making yourself available to do that. That's a big thing. Is like, when I was I'm a drummer, and so I remember being like 15, 16 and being like, man, I really want to like play drums, like specifically for Jesus, and like in a worship setting. But that wasn't. I was at a church that had a piano and an organ, and so there wasn't really anything going on there. And I had a guy at another church that my mom knew, and he like, man, just stepped into my life and like started like bringing me to his church's like Wednesday night thing. He'd be like, hey, just get up there and play. And it was incredibly intimidating and incredibly scary. But because of that, like, I learned some things that I think have kind of shaped me into this drummer or whatever that I am today. And so he took time to identify a need and then made himself available, to actually do that. And so that's really cool. And for the guys that are worship leaders out there, man, like, whether we like it or not, like, being on a stage comes with a little dose of influence. And whether we want it or not, it's there. People are watching you. People are looking at you. And so take advantage of that and open yourself up to the opportunity that I think is like waiting to invest in others. And just a real practical way of doing that is something that we found is like the whole concept, just take somebody with you. Like if you're running to Guitar Center or your local music shop to get some new strings or something, like, dude, grab a student or grab like a young guy that's interning with you or something, and man, hop in the car, drive 20 minutes, have a life-giving conversation, ask hard questions. And I promise you, the more you do that kind of stuff, you'll be surprised at how many people will approach you like, hey, I heard you did this. Can you do that for me as well? Like, that's really cool. And so that's been a really cool aspect of this. The second thought,
I was just gonna say, like, it takes a lot of intentionality to even take the time to identify someone and then make the time to invest, invest in them. And like, this is something I'm trying to challenge myself more with, just for sake, especially with my worship ministry, because right now I'm part-time at Mission Lakewood, and I do a lot of other things outside of my church ministry, church front being one of them, but at the same time I have very like high standards for my worship ministry, and I want to see that grow and to flourish for that church. And it was really exciting because about probably a month ago now, one of my former students out of high school I used to teach music at, Ashton, the guy I've already mentioned, he mentioned to me about like, hey, I really want to go into worship ministry, considering taking a gap year this next year, to really focus on what that would look like, and or might even go to like a private Christian college, which unfortunately is like super pricey and stuff, and financially it's not that realistic. But he's kind of weighing all these options, and then I was just like, wait a second, you like, if you want worship ministry experience, just hang out with me, obviously. So part of it is like he's playing keys every Sunday, he's getting better at just the musical portion of that. I plan on getting to a place where he can actually start leading as well. But then the other times, like just during the week, when we have the opportunity, it's like just having him hang out in my office, and maybe I'll have something he can help me with, even with church front, or something that's awesome. Not even exactly related with the worship leading specifically, for sure. But then I'm like, gosh, like hearing you talk, it's like I need to more intentionally, like, okay, what's the plan here? Like, how can I give him things that he can begin to take ownership over time? So, because that's a goal. Like I mean, it's great. It's satisfying to pour into other people, but then sometimes it like, there's part of it so like man, I just like want to be able to free up some of my time to do some other things. And he has all the capability to be able to learn Ableton Live or plan a set list and stuff like that. So that's the long-term goal, and that's where I'm going. And this is a good reminder to hear this stuff.
What's really cool is like all of those things, like, you have to do anyways, like you have to build your sets and you have to like invest in your team. And so allowing other people to now be a part of that process and just kind of shadow in, it's like, because I think that's always the scary thing, is people think like, oh, that's going to take extra time to do something like that. And it really doesn't have to. Like, just allow people to be a part of the stuff you're doing on a regular basis. I mean, there's a couple that kind of disciple my wife and I, and like we go to the grocery store with them, or we run errands with them, or we like eat dinner with them, and they're like crazy kids, like, and so that's been really cool to even like see that in our lives, like being a part of that. It's been really cool. And so, yeah, that's awesome, man. And that kind of leads right into like the second thought of this idea of like, so all of those things that you're doing and you're allowing people to be a part of, like that's the equipping side. So that's like, hey, I'm in a place where I have something to maybe kind of like speak life into you, or I have like something to share with you. Like you haven't experienced that, I have. And so this equipping, but I think one of the things that we've seen and like we get questions about is like, okay, I've been equipped, now what? Like I've got people investing in me, but now what? And so a lot of times it stops at that equipping side. And so like we've got to be sure on our end, like as an organization, but just as an encouragement to everybody out there that's doing this stuff is like, but make sure to empower. So like we've started using this word like within kind of our language of just like utilization, and making sure that like not just using people, because that's something that sadly, like my wife's like a graphic designer, so she's like artsy and all this stuff, and a lot of times like people will use you for your abilities, but they won't utilize you and your giftings. And so like utilization is this like there's a sense of value communicated in this. There's a sense of you have something to bring, and I trust you, and I don't just want to use it, but I want to actually like give you an opportunity to kind of thrive. And like that's what's been really cool for us. And so and in that comes a trust, and like you can't be afraid of letting people fail. Like that's something I know that's kind of hard, especially within like the worship scene, is like, we're doing these like Sunday like gatherings where we've got people on stages like in front of other people, and we want to communicate this like you said, we have these high standards, and so sometimes there's this fear of like, well, I don't know if I can really like utilize this person because something might get like broken, or like they are not that good yet, or something like that. And so, and I get that, like that's something we wrestle with all the time.
And we as worship leaders report to other leaders too. So it's absolutely. Like, kind of wanting to maintain like I don't want my senior pastor to be angry that, I had someone up there and they made a mistake, because it's going to ultimately, it's our responsibility.
Yeah. Something that our pastor was actually talking about yesterday, just like we're going through Exodus, and this idea of like how vital the wilderness like was for these people coming out of slavery and then jumping into like the promised land, is transitions and this time of like equipping and empowering kind of expose us to what we've built our life on. So especially for like musicians, like the pride that we've kind of built ourselves up on, like in how we play our instrument, or like how knowledgeable we are of the scriptures or things like that. And so taking people in this kind of process and investing in them, but then like utilizing them and like empowering them to do this stuff is like, that's a necessary process to step then into like what God's calling them into for their life. And one of the things that we've just seen, and it's kind of become as this next generation kind of grows up, like you get a lot of people being like thrown into like these leadership roles without like that kind of like training or kind of wilderness season. And then we get really upset with them when they have these moral failures, or they have these like, like the people underneath them are not being like really invested in and discipled. Well, that's because they never themselves were discipled or, taken through that process. And so that's been, and like just for us, and I think for most of the guys out there that like really like are seeking this stuff out, is discipleship is always the goal. Like in any of the stuff you're doing, if it's training a musician, if it's, whatever, like discipleship should always be the goal. And so that's kind of, we're really trying to make that a part of our DNA. But like you said, man, it's hard because there's so many things going on in life. Like, I play drums and I'm playing this band, but I have a wife and bills and, all this crazy stuff. And so,
I love the emphasis too on just not like being afraid of failure and stuff. I mean, there's certain degrees of failure, like moral failure we want to avoid, but like obviously just like in helping foster an environment where I think you even talked about too the whole utilization of like making it so you're not just like, okay, like I'm gonna train you to make my pro presenter documents or do my Ableton live sets. Like kind of like pretty much those are very straightforward tasks like to get done. But like there might be other giftings, like you said, that they have that they don't even know yet. Like you don't even know yet. And it's like as long as they have the freedom to kind of explore and kind of push themselves and to implement new ideas, like then they'll be able to discover like, oh wow, like this is a cool gifting, and like they might have a gifting that like you don't even have as their leader, and then they can add something really great to it, and then like then also at the same time like allowing space and making a safe place for failure and mistakes, because like I think if we're all not failing at something to some degree, like then you're just not pushing yourself hard enough, and you're not like that's just part of life. And I love the wilderness metaphor. I was at Catalyst West last week, and Robert Madu gave a talk on that evening, and it was all about like Jesus' baptism and going straight into the wilderness, and how that's what life is. It's like it's seasons of we feel like we're in the water, and things are great, and we know who we are in Christ, but then there's seasons where it's like we're in the wilderness, and how do you help know like the people you're developing, let them know like it's okay to be in the wilderness, like it sometimes it probably is going to feel like most of the time you're in the wilderness. So
I've got friends around here that call that skipping leg day, like that's kind of the this, especially as like artists, man, and like creatives, there's just there's a constant struggle with like value and pride and all that kind of thing, and then like for us, with our core values and like how we tried to work that out was like a lot of times I think that early on in my life as a musician, as a creative, like I would create hoping that it would lead to some form of like that it would inspire people, or like I would create because I wanted to show people something bigger than myself. But then like over the years and just like the struggles life brought, and just like God doing his thing in my heart and my life, it's like I think first seeking Jesus, and then first like sharing that with the world, and then creating out of a gratitude because of those things, that's just, I don't know, that's been something that like we've God's been working in our team. I think it was really easy to fall into, like, especially as a band, that wasn't our full-time thing. Like we would just meet up and go do events and stuff. It got really easy just to show up and do the event, and hoping that like God would do something in the midst of that, versus like, man, taking time to like invest in each other, like point each other to Jesus, and then like even like allowing our like rehearsals to be like a time of worship. And once we started investing in that and like that stuff, and trying to do that with each other, then our like events and our sets and stuff just like look totally different. And so and so it just falls onto this whole thing of like man, just really like I love that you said that, like just like fostering a space, like just creating this place for like those that we're investing in, whether if we're like the worship leader, like we're the front guy of the team or whatever, or even if you're like the drummer that's like locked in a glass box, like even you even have the ability to speak into your teammates and then other people. And so yeah, it's great stuff, man. And then like just this last thought, as we're thinking about like talking to these people who are equipping and investing in their team, it's just something that I think I've wrestled with a lot of times, man. Like I like to be the hero. I gotta be honest. Like I want to invest in these people, and like I want them to be like, oh man, Cody, like wow, dude, like you changed my life and all this thing. But with that, I tend to get in the way like a lot. Sometimes even in the way of like individuals, like personal growth, like spiritual or musical or anything like that. And so this idea of like, okay, now that I've invested in you and I've empowered you, maybe into a place where like you were able to kind of plug yourself in and get like started in terms of like leading or playing or being a part of something, is this idea of like not being afraid to let go. So most of the time you're going to reach a point with somebody that you're investing in where you have nothing left to like really teach them. They may even like, I've had people that think like, oh, let me teach you something, and then 3 weeks in and like they're better than me. So like that whole thing, which is not hard to do, but and so man, just not being afraid of like helping that person move on to maybe the next step. And sometimes that is like, just plugging them into like a new resource or connecting them with like a new person, or something like that. But one of the things I've just seen is like, and you kind of hit on it a minute ago, is like when we as leaders are modeling like growth and humility, which we get that question a lot, is like, okay, what does humility look like as a creative? Like, what does that even mean? Because it's hard, because you're constantly putting your stuff out there. And I think it's just like never being complacent with where you are, like asking questions, opening yourself up to like people to invest in you. Like, I think that's a really practical way of being humble, as a creative, as an artist. And so, but as for the people who are like investing in them and trying to like maybe help coach them and some of that stuff, man, just like be aware and be confident and okay with like just helping that person move along. And I think, man, that's just tough. That's something that is tougher even for us. Like, we've had groups that like we've had the opportunity to kind of like coach and invest in, and like they're at a place where they really just need us to be like, they just need us to shut up and kind of step out and like let them actually do it, which goes back to that whole thing of like not wanting to see them just crash and burn. But sometimes like that's what they need. And so, man, I don't know. I hope those are some helpful thoughts. And, like, as we've been putting all this stuff together and like launching into, especially thinking about like, we're moving out to the West, like we're in the Bible Belt of Arkansas, like we're moving to like SoCal, where like the culture is going to be so different. But we're excited because, I think if we were to model these things, and just making ourselves available, like equipping and actually like empowering and like utilizing these people, and then not getting in the way of their growth or their maturity, that I think we can be effective as a team and as an organization. So yeah, no, I love it. And I love those last points about just like the importance of constantly reminding ourselves that even as the leaders and the ones doing the equipping, like we need to make sure, we're humble enough to continue to be equipped ourselves, and never, whether you're 25 or you're 55 or you're 85, like I think, my hope is to continue to be a learner and be open, but there's a tension, like, it's like you're, as a creative, whatever, it's like, it takes confidence to put stuff out there, but Absolutely. It's just, it's both and of those things, and we have to hold on to them, especially if we are trying to set an example for younger folks to be willing to learn from us. So, absolutely, dude, I love it. So, how can folks kind of like if a worship leader is listening to this and be like, okay, like, I really, really want to focus on what it looks like to help equip, especially the younger generation in my church. Maybe they're in charge of a larger youth ministry, or maybe they're just in charge of a church ministry. They just want more clear, specific direction of how to develop younger folks in their church. What's the next step for them to take, or maybe how can they just connect with you guys and stay in touch? So two things. One, on a kind of practical level for them, next step for them, something that we've started doing at our local church is just started having like interest night, and just like, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people are doing this, but like it has become such a really powerful way for us to connect with people in our church that we probably never even would have approached about stepping out into serving or something like that. And have like kind of hosting this interest night, and if for no other reason, just to get together, have some snacks, and have a conversation about worship leading. And man, it's been like really special for us and our team. Like we serve at like a 4.5-year-old church plant, and this is not like a brag or anything. It's just like God's provision that we have like 40 something musicians, and a lot of them are college age students, which serve at our kind of our college gathering, but it's just become like, it's family, man, and that's been really cool. And so I would just encourage people, like, going back to that whole like becoming available for this stuff is, man, just like just start having some gatherings with these people, like get into each other's homes, like, host some dinners, like whatever it looks like, just to create a space for people to feel like they can approach you or your team, to potentially find out how they could get involved. And so, and like you said, maybe it's a thing where somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'd love to play drums. But then you, through time with them, figure out that, man, actually you'd be great serving in our hospitality team or our connection booth, and that's, I think that's really life-giving stuff. And so, but the second thing, kind of like next steps, is, man, we are really trying to figure out, just what people need. We're trying to take a very hands-on approach. And so actually coming into people's space, sometimes that can be kind of weird for us and weird for them. But one of the things I thought might be cool is for those that are listening, man, email us, email our team, at theworshippoint@gmail.com, and man, comments, concerns, ideas, thoughts, whatever, that kind of revolve around this idea of being equipped as someone who is equipping these people. As we think about investing in the next generation of worship leaders, if we were to skip the people that are doing that already, that would be a really foolish, journey. And so help us. So send us your ideas, send us your thoughts, maybe things that as you look at your team, kind of the questions that we tend to ask when we approach youth pastors or worship leaders is hey, what are you guys doing well? What do you struggle with? What would you like to see your ministry look like? And then what are the hurdles or the things that are keeping you from getting there? And so maybe use that. Send us some things, man. Brag on your team. Tell us what they're doing well. And when I say this, I'm talking about specifically maybe youth pastors investing in their youth groups, college pastors, these younger people, or maybe you're a youth pastor that you utilize a lot of young people on your Sunday teams. And so let us know. Reach out to us. Let us know. We'd love to stay connected with you guys. We're launching into this thing full-fledged come August, and are really looking forward to seeing just how what God does, and we love connecting with people and staying in touch with people. So follow along the journey. We're on all the social stuff, things like that, and so we look forward to hearing from anybody. So.
Yeah, thanks so much, Cody, for these great tips. And just kind of recap those, is really these kind of 3 areas of emphasis. Number 1, identify, folks who can be equipped and just make yourself available for them.
For sure.
Number 2, equip, but make sure to empower. Number 3, don't be afraid to let go. So really excited to see how you guys are going to be able to continue to help and serve churches, hopefully across the nation, maybe globally, at the Worship Point. And I think it's just such an important area that we need to focus our attention on, especially your ability, I think, to be able to help already existing, us older guy worship leaders like me and youth pastors, equipping the equippers, right? And giving them the tools to continue to do it, rather than, just be a one-off thing and kind of people forget. And then, because it's kind of the nature of the beast for a lot of folks. So
for sure.
Thanks so much, Cody. If you're listening to this, go to theworshippoint.com or email them, theworshippoint@gmail.com. They're on social accounts, The Worship Point. Pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
I'll also include links to the description of the podcast and the video, which this will probably become. So, Cody, keep up the great work, man, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Jake.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Cody Bray of The Worship Point, and you have some practical tips for equipping and empowering the next generation of worship leaders. You can click the links below in the description of this video to check out The Worship Point and get in touch with them if you'd like to connect with them and have them help you out and give you some guidance on how you can intentionally equip younger leaders within your sphere of influence. If you found this video helpful, please hit the thumbs up button, share this video with your other friends in ministry, and don't forget to subscribe to the Church Front channel so you can continue to receive all of our latest content to help you grow yourself and grow your church.